Columbus, Georgia, this is your City Council. Mayor Teresa Tomlinson. City Manager Isaiah Hughley. Pop Barnes, District 1. Glenn Davis, District 2. Bruce Huff, District 3. Evelyn Turner Pugh, Mayor Pro Tem and District 4. Mike Baker, District 5. Gary Allen, District 6. Mimi Woodson, District 7. Tom Buck, District 8. Judy Thomas, Post 9 at-large counselor. Skip Henderson, Post 10 at-large counselor. Tiny Washington, Clerk of Council. And City Attorney Clifton Fay. Columbus, Georgia, this is your City Council.
Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the February 23rd meeting of the Columbus City Council. We're so glad to have you with us, whether you're here or watching on CCG TV or live stream. You're going to get a lot of good government this evening. So we're going to go ahead and jump in and get started. We are going to start off with the invocation, as we do every time we gather together. And welcome to the podium Pastor Lowell Clyott, who is with the Tree of Life Center that I had the opportunity to go and visit this past week. And we're so glad to have you here, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council, for having me here this afternoon. And let's have a moment of prayer. Father, in the name of Jesus, we give thanks for the city of Columbus, Georgia, and all of its departments and agencies. We hold up in prayer before you the men and women who are in position of authority. We intercede for the mayor, council, city manager, sheriff, police chief, marshal, department heads, those who are in authority in any way in our city, and all of our city employees. We pray that the Spirit of the Lord rests upon them. We believe that skillful and godly wisdom has entered into the heart of our mayor, and the knowledge is pleasant to her. Discernment watches over her, the council and city manager. Understanding keeps them and deliver them into a place of unity and cooperation. Father, we thank you for compassing this governing body with men and women who make their hearts and their ears attentive to godly counsel and do that which is right in your sight. We believe you cause them to be men and women of integrity who are obedient to the call for cooperation, and that the citizen Columbus may lead a quiet and peaceable life. Your word declares that blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord. We receive your blessings in the city of Columbus. We declare, proclaim, and receive prosperity for our families and our business community. Lord, we give thanks unto you that the good news of the gospel is published in our city. We believe that the word of the Lord prevailed and rose mightily in the hearts and lives of the people. We give thanks for Columbus, Georgia, and the leaders you have given us. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Pastor Clyott, thank you so much for joining us and sharing with us your faith tradition this evening. And thank you for what you do for the Tree of Life Center. We appreciate you. And we have a real treat today. We've got students here from the Reese Road Leadership Academy. We're just keeping these seats warm for you guys, okay? So we're going to ask them to come forward and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. As they assemble, if you would stand and prepare to join in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, let's give them a round of applause. Now, don't go anywhere. We want you to introduce yourselves. So say your name and tell us what grade you're in.
My name's Mila Skaggs, and I'm in 3rd grade.
My name is Faye Rhino, and I'm in 1st grade.
My name is Nyla Person, and I'm in 1st grade.
My name is Michaela Badar, and I'm in 1st grade.
My name is Haley McGill, and I'm in kindergarten.
My name is Colin Hodge, I'm in 3rd grade.
My name is Samuel Jenkins, and I'm in 5th grade.
My name is Ayana Berry, and I'm in 3rd grade.
My name is Ambria Evans, and I'm in 2nd grade.
Great. Yes, and please do introduce yourselves. Yes.
My name is Lakia McElroy, and I'm the kindergarten and 1st grade activity leader.
And I'm Samantha Jackson. I'm the site supervisor.
Great. Well, let's give them a round of applause. Please take our greetings back to Reese Road. You all do such wonderful things, and we're so glad to see our future leaders here tonight. So thank you all, and thanks for doing a great job.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. This evening we have on the mayor's agenda several items related to our internal auditor. We're going to call forward at this time John Redmond, and he's going to bring forth a request as well as an introduction and a presentation. So, John, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council, Mr. Manager, Mr. Attorney. Tonight, first I'd like to make a request for approval of a special audit of sanitation vehicles. I believe this was requested by one or more members of council at the last official meeting, and I'd like to bring that forward tonight for approval.
Okay. Okay, we've got a motion and a second. We have the Mayor Pro Tem with discussion.
Mr. Redmond,
Yes, ma'am.
didn't I read somewhere that we would have to bring somebody in from the outside to do the audit?
We would probably have someone that's an expert in vehicle maintenance to do that part of the audit, but I think we have a volunteer potentially lined up for that.
At what cost?
At no cost.
Okay,
I said a volunteer.
Zero's good.
as long as it's no cost.
Price is right. Okay.
Okay, anything else? Seeing none, all those in favor, please state aye. Are there any opposed? Okay.
Thank you. Next, I'd like to introduce our new forensic auditor, Becky Myers. Becky, come forward, please. Becky's been on board with us now. This is her 5th week, and she's already dug her heels in, and we're making some real progress. So glad to have her with me, and she's a CPA. She came here with a husband who's in the military. He's a captain at Fort Benning, and they most recently served some time over in Seoul, Korea, in the Seoul area of Korea. And before that, they were in Colorado and Virginia. So Becky has 3 years of experience as a CPA, Cherry Beckett Holland, up in the Lynchburg, Virginia area.
Well, Becky, welcome. Would you like to say a few words, please?
I'd just like to say I look forward to working with all of you while I have the opportunity to work for the city.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Great. Well, we're so glad to have you. So thank you. We know you're going to be working hard. John will keep you busy.
Oh, yes. Thank you.
Okay. Next, I'd like to do the presentation of the audit report on the Columbus Hospital Authority. And this request for audit was made through the Mayor, Teresa Tomlinson, as it came from the administrative or executive branch of the government. It was authorized by the Columbus Hospital Authority Board on July 28th of 2015, and likewise by the City Council that same evening. The Hospital Authority was created by the Columbus City Council in 1968. It's operated in Muskogee Manor, a rehabilitative center for a number of years. It's currently a 170-bed long-term care facility. It now has the Orchard View Rehabilitation and Skilled Nursing Facility, a 200-bed facility. Azalea Trace Nursing Center, which is a 110-bed long-term care facility, and then the Cobus Personal Care Home, which is a 100-bed assisted living facility. Prior to the acquisition of Azalea Trace and Hamilton House, the certificate of need for the authority was 242 beds. A couple of years ago, they had the opportunity to begin acquiring a couple of nursing homes from the Columbus Regional Hospital Authority, and they did that and acquired 238 additional beds, which roughly double their long-term care bed allowance. In May of 2015, they closed the Hamilton House, and its bed allocations were reallocated to the opening of Orchard View, and 2 parcels of land were purchased as potential sites for replacement facilities, presumably for the Azalea Trace facility and the remaining Muskogee Manor and Cobus facilities. The authority's 2014 financial statements were submitted late due to some unforeseen circumstances and opportunities. As a component unit, not a composite unit of the city's authority, the financial statements are required to be combined with those of the city for reporting purposes to the state. And the state of Georgia requires that those be in within 6 months of the end of our fiscal year. Last year, they were late in reporting, and primarily due to the acquisition of one of those homes that they had to close in very short order. They also their home office staff at that time really only consisted of 2 executives, and so now they've added a third, and we'll talk about that momentarily. The 2 specific areas of concern for the audit were, one, the late filing last year, and wanted to make sure they were in on time this year because there were some potential financial repercussions to the city from the state. And secondly, the authority's ability to service their bond obligation. In 2013, they issued bonds for approximately $33.5 million to build some additional facilities, and the Orchard View was one of those. We developed a tailored audit program. We reviewed several prior year financial statements, and we held an entrance conference with their key executives discussing those concerns and how they could be remedied for the 2015 reporting. We established a due date for the financial statements that would allow the city to consolidate reporting and satisfy its state requirements. And we reviewed current year financial statements and performed ratio analysis to ensure adequacy of funding to service the bond obligation. We conducted an exit interview with the authority's executives to review audit findings and obtain their input. The authority was able to get their financials to us by November 30th, approximately 30 days ahead of time, which allowed the city to consolidate those in with it and submit to the state. And the review of the authority's financial statement indicated that they have more than adequate financial solvency and liquidity to meet its bond obligations. At the end of December, they had about $14 million plus in cash at that time, in cash equivalents. This is a picture of the Orchard View facility. Some of you may have seen it. It's out off Williams Road. It's a gorgeous facility on a 27-acre tract of land. It's really a source of pride, I think, for the community and an example of what they plan to do going forward with some of their other facilities. In fact, some of you have been out and visited with them, I think around Christmas time. I was very impressed when I toured the facility. It's nothing like the nursing homes of the days when I was auditing those things, when there were long corridors and there were lots of doors off to the side, and that's about it. This thing weaves through there. It's almost like little miniature family communities, and they have their own kitchen and eating areas and living rooms for about every 6 to 8 rooms. So it's a lovely facility, and I encourage you to go by and see it sometime if you haven't. The actual no audit recommendations, they were fully compliant with our request for this year, and the management was in concurrence with the findings. Any questions? I'd be happy to address at this time.
Doesn't look like there's anything at this time, John. Thank you so much.
Thank
and
you.
of course, we thank the Hospital Authority for their cooperation.
They were extremely cooperative.
Great partners.
We really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very much. All right. We actually we have minutes from our January 26th meeting that are ready for approval. Can I get a motion on those? We got a motion and a second from the Mayor Pro Tem, Madam Clerk. Are there any changes, additions that anyone saw? All right, all those in favor, please state aye. Okay. We also have an item I'm going to call up from the city manager's agenda, from the city attorney's agenda. We have some guests in from Atlanta, and the weather, as you all have no doubt heard, is supposed to get quite treacherous here in just a few hours, and so we want to make sure they're on the road and well and home before any of that comes down the pike. And so we're going to call forward the resolution that's on the city attorney's agenda at this time. Mr. Fay.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. If you look at your revised cover sheet, this is item 3 on our agenda, a resolution to request that the local delegation to the Georgia General Assembly introduce the attached draft legislation. Mr. Chuck Palmer has come down from Atlanta from the law firm of Troutman Sanders. we appreciate him making the effort to come tonight. Mr. Palmer has been involved in our homestead assessment freeze since its first legal challenge in the early 2000s, all the way through the upholding of that piece of legislation by the Georgia Supreme Court. But we had the pleasure of visiting with Legislative Counsel a couple of weeks ago, Mr. Palmer and I and Ms. Sheftal, and this version, this draft legislation, has been approved by Legislative Counsel at the Capitol, and this is what they recommend we proceed with at this time. We're going to open it up for discussion. If the council has questions, Mr. Palmer and I will certainly try to answer them. I know there are a lot of people here in the audience that also may want to comment, so we'll open it up.
Okay. Any comment from the City Council this time? And it is, and I want to thank Chuck and Clifton for their hard work, and certainly the Legislative Council for their hard work as well. It was really a tremendous joint effort, and y'all are certainly to be commended. Councilor Woodson. Let's see. Here we go. There we go.
Yes, Mayor. I just want to, since I'm looking at it really quickly, I just want to be reassured that the present property freeze that we have in place now will not be removed, correct?
Right. That is correct.
Once this goes to the ballot, at the ballot, the polls, the citizens will be voting for the new process, but it will not take away the old.
Correct. And Clifton or Chuck, do you want to address that? The question was basically the citizens would be going to the polls to vote on basically thawing it. So if you had the freeze, you would keep it. As of January 1, 2017, new purchases would then vest in a fair market value system. So in essence, the freeze would be retired and nobody else could get into it. No new purchases could get into it. Did you want to speak to that,
correct.
Clifton? Or?
Chuck, why don't you come on over to the tall podium? But that's basically correct. Any person who buys a homestead property after January 1, 2017 would not be under the freeze system. They would simply be eligible for the same $13,500 exemption that everybody else can apply for now, and they'd be assessed at fair market value going forward.
And I think if anything with the input of Legislative Council, that has only been fortified. So Chuck, did you want to make any comment related to that question?
No, I think the summaries that both of you provided are accurate. So happy to answer any further questions, but
yeah, we've got a few.
Sure.
We'll just have a discussion. Let's see, Councilor Allen.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Palmer, I've had a couple of folks read this, and what I was told, I'm not an attorney, what I was told was that this is an up or down vote. The freeze is either lifted or it's retained.
Yes. The answer to that is correct, is that the question that will be presented to the voters if this were to move forward is whether to, in essence, you could use the word sunset is a phrase I think many people are familiar with, or phase out. And as the mayor described, purchases after 2017 would be subject to what I call a standard fair market value valuation for purposes of calculating property taxes. Everybody else who currently has their house would retain the freeze that's in effect today. So that's the way that the legislation is structured.
How does this language assure the homeowners that if this is a pass, that they will be able to retain their home and then their home taxes will not be increased?
There's been a lot of thought that has gone into this, and we've worked with Legislative Counsel on ensuring just that. And as was mentioned, I've got a history with this. I argued it before the Georgia Supreme Court several years ago. Then Representative Buck was there. I recall him being there for the oral argument. So we've thought about this for a long time because that has been in place for a long time. It was actually adopted in the early 1980s. And so that has been a key concern. that we've wanted to make sure that the people who are currently have their taxes frozen are protected under this new legislation. And so there's been a lot of thought and effort that's gone into doing exactly that.
And one thing, Councilor Allen, too, that was a very important part of the discussion, as you know, and it was the Legislative Council that recommended that we not go with the language of repeal and replace, but to continue on with basically just sunsetting it for future purchases. And so, if anything, as I said, that has been fortified by this revision.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. I understand you worked on the original proposal that the mayor brought to us.
That's correct.
A few months ago.
As well as ACCG, the Association of County Commissioners.
Okay. Initially, I think it was mentioned that the public was going to be offered a $6,500 increase in their homestead value exemption. There's a lot of concern in the community at this point. As I read this, that is going away.
That's correct.
So there will be, I guess, if this passes, council passes legislature, there will be an education process in the community to try to correct that piece of information, that the citizens will no longer have an advantage of the $6,500 as was talked about last year.
That's correct, and that's as a result of Legislative Council made a determination that that was too many questions to have in a single question presented to the voters. And so we had attempted to put all that in one legislative package, and they said that you couldn't include the $6,500 homestead exemption, additional exemption, that was too many questions in one question.
And also,
so the proposal was found to be unconstitutional by the Legislative Council over the House. Is that correct?
Over the House?
Over the House of Representatives.
They serve both the House and the Senate.
Both? Okay. Well,
yes.
The Legislative Council of Georgia determined that it was unconstitutional.
They had a concern about that, right.
Okay. Did you go with that ballot question? Did you go to the council initially?
Yes, we did. That was the initial draft that was proposed, which included the additional $6,500. And they said no, that weaving all that into one question presented to the voters. You could do that separately. If you were to decide we want to do this and we also want to do a $6,500 additional homestead exemption, you could do that as a separate ballot question, but it couldn't be all in one question.
I guess I didn't phrase my question correctly. With the first draft that you brought us,
yes,
was that draft presented to the Legislative Council before it came to this council?
No. That came here for approval first, then it went straight up to the legislative delegation. They took it and discussed it with Legislative Council, and they said, we've got concerns.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Mayor.
yeah, Legislative Council's attorneys for elected officials in the legislature, so they don't answer to or give advisory opinions to people who are not members of the delegation. And for purposes of the public education process, certainly we've been at this for many years. For, I guess, the first 2 years of forums, and Chuck may not know this, but the first 2 years of forums and so forth, the $6,500 exemption wasn't in those forums. That was as a result of a lot of citizens' input who actually opposed it, wanted that in there, wanted the benefit front-loaded. There were other provisions put in and taken out over time. And so certainly that dialogue will continue now with the vote being in November if it completes the rest of the process that we're deliberating upon today. So, Councilor Thomas.
I have a couple of questions for you. The language that will appear on the ballot, this language has been approved by Legislative Council, correct?
Yes, ma'am. In fact, it was created by them.
Okay. Let me make sure that I understand the process too, Mr. Palmer. I think I understand how the homestead exemption stuff works. If I buy a house today, I have to own that house January 1 of 17 in order to get a homestead exemption. Is that correct?
Right, and you have to actually apply for the homestead exemption.
So,
Right.
so as of right now, I would not have a homestead exemption on that property if I bought it today, correct?
I believe that the deadline is in April, if I'm not mistaken.
Until April 1.
Okay, so let's say I buy my house in May,
Okay.
okay? Here's my point. Here's my question. If I buy a house in 2016, this applies, this taking me out from under the freeze applies to that house, correct?
No, it's
Okay.
after, if you
Help
do
me.
that in 2016, you're going to be under the freeze, so long as you apply for the homestead exemption.
But I can't get the homestead exemption until January of 17. Isn't
Well,
that correct?
No, what this will change is for purchasers of homes from January in 2017 forward, so next year. That's what this will apply to.
Okay, so even technically, I don't have a homestead on this house I buy in May, I'm still covered under the freeze.
You have to apply.
If I apply, if I do all
So
that
long as you
stuff,
apply.
I'm
You're
still
protected.
covered.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and it's the house that I close on January the 2nd of 2017 that comes out from under the freeze.
You're
Is that
correct.
right?
That's
Okay.
right.
I'm just trying to make sure that I understand exactly how all of this is coming about. Mayor, are we to the, not asking questions, but commenting stage? You ready for that?
Yeah, we've got some counselors still in line.
Well, let me just wrap up what I want to say. When this came to us last, whatever it was, a couple of months ago, I voted no. And the reason that I voted no was the question that was put to us was, shall this be put on the ballot? And at that point in time, I had had numerous conversations with numerous attorneys who said to me, we have some issues with the way this is written. We don't think it's legal. And we think that if you agree to this, putting it on the ballot, it goes on the ballot, you will be open to having the city have lawsuits brought against it as we did in the past. And so I voted no because I felt like we ought to make sure. And then it's my understanding that after that vote was taken, and it was a split vote on this council, some of our legislative delegation took the language that we had approved and took it to the legislative council, who indeed said, this won't work. This is not legal. You can't do this. And then our legislative delegation and our legal folks worked with the legislative council and came up with this. I'm not sure who wrote the bill, the accompanying bill. Wasn't the legislative council?
Yes.
The final version of that's
The
before you.
question was written by Leg Council.
No, this whole bill was written by legislative
Right.
council.
We met with them, and I think that our input is reflected in this version.
Okay. But this came basically from them. So,
Right.
so we have on the authority of the legislative council who advises our legislators that they think this will pass muster. I have had lots of contact from people in the community who are opposed to our even putting this on the ballot, much less the content of what it says. And I want to be real clear with everybody. I, by the way, have not had a single contact from anyone, not a single contact from anyone to encourage me to vote yes to put this on the ballot. But I have had contact from those who are urging me to vote no. I want it made really clear that what we are voting on is whether or not to put this on the ballot. We are not voting on shall the freeze be lifted. That is an entirely different question, and that is the question that the voters will answer when it gets to the election in November, if it gets that far. I will also say that there is a lot, Mayor, of misunderstanding in the community about the content of this. So if this does indeed go on the ballot, I'm hoping that someone, and I don't know who that someone is, maybe somebody sitting in this audience, is going to sponsor some forums all over town so that both sides of the question, shall the freeze be lifted, can be debated. That is not what we are debating here tonight. All we're debating here tonight is, shall we vote to put it on the ballot? When I voted no in October, whenever it was, I said to this group, I am voting no because of the legality of this question. For me, that legality has been resolved. This is legal, from what I have been told by Legislative Council. And so tonight I'm going to vote yes. And I'm going to vote yes to put it on the ballot so that the citizens can decide whether or not we keep the freeze. I have never voted on the freeze. I was not living in Columbus when it was initially put on the ballot and when it came back. So I'm looking forward to my first vote on the freeze. But I want to be really clear, because of all of the comments and the contacts that I have received. Those that have talked to me have said, don't put it on the ballot because we think we ought to keep the freeze. That's your privilege. I'm not putting it on the ballot because I think we should or should not keep the freeze. I'm voting to put it on the ballot because I want the people in Columbus to have an opportunity to vote. That's probably more about artichokes than you wanted to know. But there it is.
Councillor Huff.
My first question is, according to our charter, that we are the legislative branch here. So initially, we came up with legislation that was voted upon and sent to the state. And the state took a look at it. You all went into your meetings and decided it was not appropriate and came up with new language. And I'm just having a problem that it didn't come back to us for discussion. It's come back to us in a document to vote to say, here it is. We've had no public forums for the public to understand, have to ask questions. I am the one who always says, some of this we make it very difficult. If we would come in and meet with the public and talk to the public about what we would like to do, and they had time to have some input and ask questions and understand, a lot of these situations wouldn't exist. You probably would have been able to stay in Atlanta on a bad weather night and receive a phone call tomorrow saying everything's a go. But that's my issue, because I feel like as the legislative branch here, when things go right or wrong for us, we get credit for all of it. So now we're receiving information from the state level back to the local level, and we're going to still get credit for it, right or wrong. So I just do not believe anybody, and I'm sure Councilor Buck could help me with this, would accept anything from us sending to the state to tell them it was done right or wrong. The example Councilor Thomas brought up, I'm still trying to wrap my arms around it, my mind around it. If a property is bought after April 1st of 2016, and you forget to apply for homestead by April 1st of 2017, what happens to that property?
Then you would lose the exemption if you did not apply for the apply for your homestead exemption. And so part of the education process will be making sure that people are aware of that.
Okay, so all properties bought after April 1st, 2016 would have to apply for homestead by April 1st, 2017 to still receive the freeze.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Okay, and anyone that forgets goes under the new system.
That's correct.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And that's the way it is now. If you don't
Right.
file your homestead exemption right now, you don't get the freeze.
No, but you have another year to do it.
Right.
You can do it the following
But
year.
you don't get
That's
it
right.
until you do it.
Yeah, but you have another year. I mean, I was one of those in my younger days that forgot, and I had another year to apply for it. That's what I'm saying. The public needs to know that if you forget, there is no second chance on this. I'm just still basically having a problem with the fact that this is a well-written document, but it has not been vetted on the local level at all.
And
The idea has been vetted, but not this document.
And I can appreciate that. Understand this only came up within the last few days, this particular version. I think this is the first meeting that you've had since we had the opportunity to work with Legislative Council and get this back.
Right. I mean, I understand where you are, but I'm saying in order for you to work in a tight time frame, we still haven't had any time to discuss it on this end. So that's my issue with that. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We have Councilor Henderson.
Thank you, Mayor. And I know this has been asked 3 or 4 times already. I just want to be clear, because I know years ago when you filed, when you wanted to file for homestead, you had to be physically inhabiting the house as the owner on January 1. And then at that time, you had to file prior to April 1st, I believe, before
That's
the end
correct.
of March. But I understand now, the minute you take ownership of the property, you can go ahead and go down there and file with the tax department for homestead? Or do you still have to wait till the first of the year?
I don't know the answer to that. I think that your folks here would know how that works better locally.
The general rule is you've still got to own and occupy that house on January 1 in order to get the homestead exemption for that calendar year.
Okay. But the way this is written, the way I read it, and it's in legalese, so I need you to be my interpreter, but I read it that it's for property that is where the deed is transferred after January 1, July 17, or January 1, 2017. So you can, if you buy it, that's what you were saying, if I understood correctly, if you buy it in the middle of 2016, you can't file until after the first of the year on 17, but you do have that option throughout that year.
Well, as long as you file the application between January 1 and April 1 of 2017.
Okay, so the April 1 deadline still exists?
Yes.
I don't know why
And
I thought I'd heard
you'll
that it
still
didn't.
be eligible to have the frozen homestead assessment.
Well, that's fine. It's not going to change my vote either way, because this is not debating the merits of whether or not the freeze should be lifted. This is simply talking about whether or not it should be on a ballot so the citizens of Muskogee County have an opportunity to vote for it. I voted for it the first time, which is why it was sent to the Legislative Council. Had we not approved it the first time, it would not have made it to that point where we could have it vetted by the folks who are going to have to put it on, who have to carry the water to put it on the ballot. I have heard from both sides. I have heard from some folks who are encouraging us to put it on the ballot, and I've also heard from folks who don't want it on the ballot because we voted on it before. In my mind, we voted on a completely different question. That question was truly the up or down. I mean, if you pulled that lever and it passed, it was gone. January 1. People who were under it lose it. People who had a tax bill of $50, we're going to get a tax bill, I can't even do the math, but it's going to be a good bit higher. So I think under this scenario, they are getting an opportunity to vote on a completely different question, because they are being asked, do you want to retain the freeze if you can, if you have the option of being grandfathered in and just sunset it for new folks. I think that there's going to be a long educational process, because I've heard snippets of conversation that, while accurate, are unintentionally misleading. We talked about the fact that even though the homestead exemption is no more unless we decide to put it on the ballot at a future date, that council does have the ability to lower millage, which is the ultimate objective of, I think, most members of council is try to make it more affordable to live in our community. The reality of that is it's a generational thing, and it is highly unlikely that there'll be any manipulation of the millage downward for many years, because we're going to have to get more people off. We're going to have to get more people off the freeze than on in order to see that assessment rate yield us enough money to cover our budget, and then be able to shift it downwards. Long term, I won't be sitting here, and I doubt many of the folks around here will be. But we will be in a situation where we'll do our budget the way most governments do, where you get an assessment of the total tax digest, you figure out what you have to spend, you do the math, and you come up with a millage. And the millage should be lower once everybody is off the freeze. But for the foreseeable future, that's not likely. So anyway.
Okay.
I'm going to continue to support it, put it on there.
All right. Okay, we've got a motion. Is there a second? Okay, we have further discussion. Councilor Davis?
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, just based on some of the discussion around the table, Mayor, I had the opportunity to attend a lot of the forums that you were able to go around and share with the citizens what exactly is being proposed. And of course, we know now that it's different. So in light of the concerns, and I've received a number of concerns today and in the past on this very topic, my question would be, what is the plan now, being that this is somewhat, it's my understanding. Let me ask you, when is the last day that a bill can be submitted?
You know what? The gentleman sitting right beside you probably can answer that.
Well, they have what they call the crossover period, right?
But, yeah, that doesn't apply to local legislation, but yeah.
When is the last day? It's real soon, right?
Right. Oh, no, you've got a...
Within this week?
I think it's the 29th, isn't it? And then, but it does not apply. We've already confirmed it doesn't apply to local legislation.
I believe today is the 23rd day. And so it's the 30th day is crossover. And but as the mayor said, it doesn't apply to the local legislation.
So a bill can be entered after that period?
Local legislation.
Local legislation. Okay. Well, Mayor, I would like to ask, what is the plan? What can we expect? What can the citizens expect from here on out, being that, again, I had the opportunity to hear your proposals that were being placed before the citizens. What can we expect? What can the citizens expect from here on out to the point of November when this possibly could be on the ballot?
Well, I would expect a nonstop educational campaign. As Councilor Thomas stated, I would imagine every civic organization, every neighborhood association, they've already been engaged and asked to have speakers come. They've debated amongst themselves. I know the chamber had a leadership group that had people get up in teams and debate it one day. I wasn't there, but I heard it was very robust. And so I'd imagine you would see those types of almost constant education forums and debates and education opportunities. And I'm sure there'll be full-fledged campaigns as well, as you would typically see with a referendum.
I guess my question is, do you plan on having specific forums yourself in
I can,
educating
yeah.
the community?
I absolutely can. I can do as many as I possibly can. Whatever if this council would like to have them here, we could do it here. We could have council members do them in their districts, however you all would like to arrange it.
Well, those are all great ideas. I think it would be very appropriate and the right thing to do for you to go back out and re-educate the citizens on what exactly we're talking about here. This is my first opportunity to really vote on this, although I'm voting on amended language that's been placed here. I was out of the country. I was over in South Africa, and I learned a few things over there. I became a fan of rugby while I was over there. But, I somewhat equate this to the game of rugby where you have your two sides. And you know what a scrum is? Does everybody know what a scrum is? A scrum is where both sides get together and just get in the middle and they toss the ball and then they go after it, right? And, you know, there's a lot from a word picture here to compare. I have noticed one thing that's really important to me is the welfare of the community. And I have noticed that there's a lot of discord over this matter. You have people that are ardently taking sides, whether it's for it or against it. I don't know if I've come across anybody who's in the middle, to be honest with you. But in saying that, I think what's important to me and what I see that something of this matter, I don't think it goes away. It's the old saying, you know, bad news doesn't go away over time. It just gets worse. You know, it's just bad news. And not saying that this is bad from a standpoint, depending on who you are and how you take it. And there's valid concerns across the board. And it's not a matter whether I support it or whether I don't support it. I still have, personally, I have some concerns. I have some concerns theoretically, logically, and mathematically. And like I said, I do have concerns for the welfare of our community. But I do know, I think, in a situation like this, that you have to find resolution. You have to put these things to rest, and we need to put it to rest in our community. I will be supporting putting this on the ballot because I think that's the way to do it. I think that the citizens need a chance to put this to rest. So I appreciate all of your hard work and effort, and Mayor, and I'm finished with my comments.
Sure. Thank you. All right. We have a motion and second. And Councilor Allen?
I'm sorry, Mayor. Can I ask one more question?
Sure, yeah.
Clifton, this was not posted on our agenda as normally it would be on, I believe, Friday. It was not sent to council till yesterday afternoon about 4 o'clock. We're voting on a piece of legislation, basically, that has not been publicly reached, I guess, met the threshold of a public notice. Are we in violation of anything in doing this? Or
no, sir.
Can you talk about that to clarify?
I mean, this simply amends what you did back in October. You had one draft, and this is another draft, but there's no requirement that it be on the paper agenda that came out Sunday. We didn't get it back from the legislative delegation until, I guess, yesterday afternoon. So we couldn't very well get it to you, and so this has been approved by Legislative Council before that. But what will happen is if Council passes this, Representative Smyrie will send down a notice of intention to introduce local legislation. Councilor Buck used to sign those in years past, but he will send that down. It will be advertised in the newspaper here, the Ledger, at least a week before the bill is introduced. And that is the formal notice that has to be met with local legislation.
Okay. Just to clarify again for council and for my benefit, at the last council meeting, council was handed out another draft. Where are we with that draft? That's been withdrawn?
No, that was that was an update, and I was going to say it when Councilor Huff made his comments, but we gave an update of where we were. There was a consensus draft at that point, then there were further meetings and consultation, and it resulted in what you have before you now. So that was, and at the time, if you go back to the clip, I said this is an update, it's still being actively worked on. And at that time, we were waiting to hear back from Legislative Council as to their thoughts and additions and so forth. And then, as Chuck has said, Legislative Council actually sat down after all those conversations and drafted this document you have before you in their entirety, taking in the comments and input that our team gave and our local delegation expressed was important. And so this is their work that you have before you.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. All right. Well, that concludes the comment. We are in discussion. We have a motion and second on the table. There being no further discussion, it actually is an add-on, so we're not going to be able to do it electronically. We'll do a roll call vote. All those in favor, please state aye. Are there any opposed? Okay, Tiny, you want to take it? Was just the one? Okay. All right. Thank you much. Chuck, thank
All
you,
right,
and
thank
safe
you.
travels back to Atlanta. Thank you for coming down.
Thank y'all. Good to see you.
Appreciate you. Okay, and Mr. Fay, do you want to continue on with your agenda? I'm sorry. There you go.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. We've got 2 zoning hearings we need to get to quickly. The first one is property at 8692 Veterans Parkway, going from single family 1 to neighborhood commercial. Ms. Linda Cook, petitioner, is she here? Okay, hang on just a second. Let's see if anybody in the audience.
Yeah, we have Counselor Allen.
I would like to
Oh.
ask the gentleman a question.
Okay, come on up, please, sir, and give them your name and address for the record. We got some questions, and we'll see if anybody
Good
else
evening,
wants
all
to
of you.
comment.
Good evening, all of you. Good evening, all of you.
All right.
Yeah, my name is Mike Babani. I'm trying to open the convenience store and coffee shop.
I guess you need to give your address as well.
It's 8692 Veterans Parkway, Columbus, Georgia.
Your address, where you live.
Live 7961 Oakmont Court.
Okay. Mayor, if I could, I'd like to ask the gentleman, in looking at the plat, it appears to me, and I'm a layperson, but I would like maybe planning or someone to help me with this. I'm not opposed to your development. My concern is that it looks like your development is very close to Veterans Parkway, and it's going to be widened by the state at some point, and I want to make sure that there's enough room there to allow for that on his property. As I said, I'm a layperson. I'm not a drafter of plats or an attorney, so I want to make sure that no one comes back to the city later and says, you know, I've lost half my parking lot here.
Right. Council Allen, for right now, there are no real plans for the widening of Veterans Parkway at this point. It is under discussion. I had conversations yesterday with GDOT about that very subject, about when they were going to start that process, and they're probably at least another 2 years out before they even start coming forward with that project. At this point, we really don't have any real plans. The only thing we can do at this time is ask and request that they set back based on our zoning requirements now. There's no guarantee also that even from past discussions about the widening of Veterans, that it will actually follow the existing roadway as it is today. It may veer off and go another direction. We just don't know that at this point.
Well, there is no accel-decel lane for this parking lot or for this establishment, and it appears to me that he is literally going to lose half of his parking lot if the state goes in that direction. I just want to make sure everybody's aware that that's what's going to happen.
And we can.
Am I right? I mean, the state
potentially could, yes. I mean, but I have no guarantee of that today in any way to discussion. But again, we don't have any actual plans for that site to be widened.
But should this gentleman not be aware that that is a significant possibility?
Yes, he should, and we certainly will do that. Make him aware of that fact, that the potential for the widening to go through that area.
That's a good question. If Councilor Baker asked if we would have to compensate him if they took part of his property. He has plenty of room to move it back deeper. I don't know what the topography is, but he does have. It appears he has plenty of room to move everything deeper in the lot.
We certainly can ask and make him aware of that fact and work with him on that issue about trying to address and move that building back further.
Yeah, I can do it.
So we can work through that process. That's not a
The
big.
city attorney, would the city be liable if we knowingly approve this and then he loses half his parking lot?
The city could conceivably be liable for some right-of-way acquisition costs in the future, even though it's a state highway. So, I mean, that's a potential. We need to get planning to sit down with him and carefully consider a setback that will accommodate any state widening.
All right, we certainly can do that.
So would we need to amend this to have the setback a greater depth, or would he need to sign a waiver to hold us harmless if he leaves it where it is?
Well, what's the normal setback from the...
Normal setback right now is 20 feet from the right-of-way itself for the zoning classification.
Well, you might want to consider 40 feet if he could live with that. That would double it, but...
Can you do 40 feet?
But I question, I can park behind also. I plan, we can park
Yeah,
backside too.
we're talking about shifting this back further back. Instead of the 20 feet, go back 40 feet. Would you be in agreement with doing that?
But see, parking is, I can take the parking, we can park behind also after that. If something come out, we can park behind too.
Council Allen, if you would like to make that as a part of the condition of the ordinance, we can certainly work with him on that and making this work out.
Would we, is he in agreement with 20 feet, an additional 20 feet?
Yeah, 20 feet more.
Yeah, 20 feet more back.
Okay, so I have plenty of room.
Okay. Well, if he's agreeable, let's get an amendment, at least a vote on an amendment for the record then, to expand the front, what do you call it, the front yard setback?
Front setback, yes.
Front setback, to double it to 40 feet.
I make a motion to that effect.
Okay, that's a motion and second to amend to 40 feet.
The front setback.
All right, any discussion related to this amendment of front setback? I know you're up for, are you up for the entire thing or this?
No.
Okay, all right. There being no discussion as to the amendment, all the...
I want to talk to him about the amendment.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, Counselor Woodson to the amendment then.
Thank you. I just want to make sure, Rick, that he truly understands what we're talking about, because I saw him and kind of heard him having a sidebar with you about moving the parking lot to the back.
Yeah, but
So we need to make sure that he understands what we're about to do now is add another 20 feet.
Okay.
So that's going to move your building back
that's fine.
20 feet.
Yeah.
You're okay with that?
I'm
You
okay
have
with that.
enough room for it?
Yeah. I'm
Okay.
okay with
I
that.
just want to make sure.
Sure. Thank
Okay.
you.
You're welcome.
Okay. All right, there being no further discussion on the amendment, all those in favor, please state aye. Any opposed? Okay.
Okay, it's amended. We will, if there are no other comments or questions, we'll bring it back in 2 weeks as amended.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, 2 weeks though.
2 weeks. Be back at a 9 o'clock meeting as amended for a vote. All right. Next item is a rezoning hearing on, this is a text amendment to the Unified Development Ordinance to allow for concealed support structures designed for small cell technology on public right-of-way. It's ready for any discussion. Mr. Jones is here for any questions.
UDO amendment, any thoughts on that? Okay, none at this
All right.
time.
We'll bring that back in 2 weeks for a vote. Thank you, Mr. Jones. Mayor, that's all we had listed.
All right. And next, we have our public agenda. First, we're going to call forward this, excuse me, oh, wait, yes, sir. Okay, hold on a second. We've got Counselor Davis.
Look, can we get Director Jones just to tell us what they're talking about with these, the small cell technology? I mean, what are we expecting here?
I'm sorry, Counselor.
I just want to ask you on this change, when they talk about concealed support structures and small cell technology, what are we actually, what are we talking about? What, you can help me visualize it out in the community.
You're visualizing, and we can bring you a picture for next time before you vote on this. You're showing actually a small box-like device that will be on a utility pole itself. In a lot of ways, it's going to be pretty much non-determinable, really, in terms of difference to anything else out there. Okay. This is just technology we're seeing coming forward. It is now allowed by the state for them to go automatically on a utility pole. All we're asking is some coordination in terms of when they go out there to make sure they're not interfering with any utilities we may have or anybody else's utilities in the right-of-way itself. They're going to be pretty much, hopefully, you really won't be able to see them when it's all said and done.
Will the